Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to NerdTube. And it's time to talk about Loki, episode 5 of season 2, science/fiction. I'm here with our usual crew as we talk about Loki getting the band back together again, Baron Munchausen style. Cheeto, what did you think of this episode?
I thought it was okay. I it was exactly what you said. It was getting the band back together. I feel like it was kind of a step back from the last two episodes prior to, in my opinion. But I thought it was serviceable for a penultimate episode. We have to get the crew back together after. So I think the big revelation is that this is all of their lives on the timeline, is what I'm assuming that's what this means. So this is the actual people, not the variants that were in the TVA. These are the actual these are the actual people on the timeline whose lives they are. So that was a pretty good revelation that we had. But I don't know. I really felt like they were going to go in a different direction with this. So
Before I pass it on, did you like the fact that good old Rutherford was apparently Frank Morris, the guy they couldn't find who escaped Alcatraz? And that makes sense why they couldn't find him, because he ended up being part of the TVA.
Well, wouldn't it have been his variant was a part of the TVA, not the original one? So that's the whole point of the TVA, and they're all variants. Yeah. They're not the actual main canon people, So no, but I mean, him being like that's kind of a total 180 from the character that we know from the TVA and Rutherford from Star Trek Lower Deck. So I thought it was interesting that that he turned out to be like that rather than some goody two shoe nerd IT department type guy.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate that. Gaz, what do you think of this episode?
A bit of a step down for the last two episodes, which have been stellar. But I thought it's pretty good to establish, the states going into the final episode. So pretty well done for that.
Okay, Ginge?
Yeah, I loved this episode. I thought it was really good. Not as good as the previous two, but it's what it does with it that people kind of overlook. And it's not really about getting the band back together. It's about Loki's journey. He thinks he needs the team to kind of get everything working again because he doesn't want to be alone anymore. He's found his companions and he thinks he kind of needs them to get things working. But what we find is that he's slowly able to start controlling his time jumping. And that for me was the most interesting part, was that it was like, it goes through all this to kind of get the band back together. You start to see now this is how the TVA actually starts. And you're starting to think, is this Kang's plan all along? Is this how it all originally happened? And with the variants beginning, was it Loki that created these particular variants by coming back in time and taking them away from their normal life? So is it Loki's fault that these particular guys ended up at the TVA? Because once it started, like, they get in there, they stabilize it, and that's the kind of beginning. And you have this kind of loop, the circle that carries on of, like, who created what and all this kind of shit. And then by the end of it, you get like one of the most beautiful scenes with the what's the fucking Sylvie, in the record shop playing the Velvet Underground, Sweet Nothing. Great song. I love that song. The minute I heard that song, I was just like, you couldn't have picked a better song. And then just seeing that whole scene unravel, and then she's able to use the time thing to just kind of get out of it at the end. But it's the fact that it's Loki's journey to discovering that this is all about him and how he could control this. And I don't know if it's his body that's slipping back, but more his consciousness that he can jump back in time. And that's why I love this episode. It didn't have to be like big, like a whole big thing like the previous two. It was more just like, if you understand the kind of the machinations of what's going on, then that's what made the episode great for me.
Yeah, it was setting up what the finale, which you can't necessarily have a wham bam thank you ma'am episode as the penultimate. Not necessarily. It can be, but not necessarily. And so I had no problem with this episode myself. What I personally liked about this episode was the use of time travel in various aspects. Like little bits where Loki, he sees himself and he says hello, and then he ends up in that very position where he saw himself and he sees his past self say hello to him and stuff like that. Genius. When he goes to visit Morbius and he tries to tell him about the TVA, and then eventually they put themselves in the position to see Morbius looking back at himself and all of that, as Loki initially approached him. And most humorously was Ouroboros visiting him. The guy is selling science fiction books, but he's also a PhD of some sort. And he leaves him with the TVA book, and he's able to create the first time travel device, which was also a nice touch. He's obviously had the book for years, or a couple of years. Was able to make the device after 18 months, but I liked it very much, and seeing all these different variants in the lives that they would have lived if they didn't join the TVA. Being a doctor and being a jet ski salesman and all of that. It was fascinating. It was interesting, but then as we progressed, and then seeing everything turn to spaghetti, like what the fuck,
Yeah, that's what I loved. Like just seeing all everything slowly just disintegrating away into nothingness, and like the bit with Sylvia and McDonald's just disappears, and all the items kind of disappearing bit by bit. Even the first kind of time pad that was created. Seeing the doctor lady who was in 2012 as well. That's when Avengers happened. Yeah. So I don't know. So that was kind of cool. So Loki was back in time when he was already attacking New York. I feel they could have done something with that, but it doesn't matter. It's not really about that kind of fan service, which is what I like. It's about just, time is slipping, got to get cracking, all this kind of shit. And it's just great. I just love the team that's together, like a hodgepodge of different people, and fucking just Owen Wilson's just great in everything. Here he's trying to be a dad. I don't know if he's because the time he was at 2022, that's when Thanos did the snap. So he's like a single dad. So I don't know if his wife just disappeared, or she's dead, or what.
Totally forgot about the bloody snap. Yeah.
This time period, the snap has happened. So it's quite interesting.
I mean, because I went to ask that, like in the Marvel universe, when does the snap officially end? Because I know it's like 5 years or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, the snap happens in. I don't know. It
happens in 2018, 2019, and
2019, and it ends 2023.
Yes, so this year.
Yeah. No, but the Marvel universe is ahead of us by a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, 4 years, I think.
Yeah. So like some of the stuff we see, it was like 2, 3, 4 years ahead
2025, for example.
Yeah.
When we see the poster. Yeah. So
I mean,
by a couple of years.
I mean, like the thing that I really loved about this episode was how everything that the human said has come true. Like, for example, that Ouroboros was responsible for the first time travel device because of the book that he remains wrote. So, like, who is responsible for the device? So it's like what he said in the first episode has come back to it, and I love storytelling like that, where they've set something up and they've actually paid it off. And the other thing that I think has been paid off is how much Sylvie and Loki's relationship has progressed since the first season, because it's one where it was quasi-romantic, and now it's kind of like almost like they want to be together, but they know they can't. And it's one of those like sort of like tortured romances things, which I'm all for.
I'm all for them going away from the whole Sylvie Loki relationship.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, personally. And
I get it for Norse mythology. Well, I get it for Norse mythology that it's not weird, because Norse mythology is fucking weird anyway. But like, I don't know. I really feel like that was a good idea to step away from that nonsense. I didn't like it when it happened in the show. For me, I liked what Sylvie wanted. She just wanted a regular, simple life where nobody was chasing her, and she could just fucking serve a Big Mac and listen to music in her free time.
And I thought that was good enough. It's not about her wanting to be romantically involved in Loki or anything like that. She's killed him
or anything like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So I very much appreciate it. I did like that scene as well, by the way. The moment the fucking mug disappeared and everything, and the guy starts chasing her, and I actually thought that because she and Loki are the same, that she would have the same sort of abilities as Loki. But then when she meets Loki in Ouroboros' headquarters, which looks exactly like his room in the TVA, by the way. I'm not sure if you guys noticed that.
Yeah.
And then she turned into spaghetti. So it seems that Loki has the power, and I've been hearing some rumors that apparently Loki's going to get powered up after all of this. He's going to have he's going to be some sort of like storyteller Loki, which is a character in the Marvel comics allegedly. So it was like a really powerful version or variant of Loki. Cool. So so we'll see how that.
Really can't wait for next week's episode. I hope we don't get the usual. The good thing is it's not setting itself up to be like one of those rush to get the action over and then resolution. It doesn't look like that. It just looks like it's leading into be whatever it's going to be, where nobody knows what's coming next, and that's what I like. Whereas with everything else, it's been very predictable. We always say, "Oh, here we go, big fight at the end," then about 20 minutes of resolutions, and then disappointment and all this kind of shit. Was this one? I mean, if it finishes on a high, then this is by far just it's already the best thing in the MCU, like in terms of the TV stuff. This season, it's been amazing, and I'm like with Gaz says, is the storytelling has had fantastic payoff each and every time. Everything they've set up before is just getting paid off, and they've just done it so bloody well. And it's just, it's the first time I woke up 6 o'clock. It was yesterday or the day before, whenever it was out, and I just put it on immediately. Normally, you've got to do your daily routines and all this kind of. No, I just whacked it on because I couldn't wait, and that's always a good sign. And I just hope the consistency is there, because like even with Echo looking violent as shit, it could be a nice little mafia tale, a nice little gangster kind of thing. So, if it's back on track for Marvel, then it's all good. But for this show in particular, you don't want it to end, but you're glad it's going to end, and it hopefully ends on a high, and we can wash off the stink of Secret Invasion.
Well, I was going to say that's one thing I'm kind of hoping that he doesn't shit the bed, because they does so many things so well. Like, because all of us here have probably seen enough time travel stories go off the flaming the cliff at the end because they get too convoluted. It's like, no, this is the time to tell a direct story, because the thing is that you can make it that whoever is in charge of the time stuff, I mean, to say it's Loki, but I don't think it is. I think it's somebody else. And like they give him a self sense, and that's what kind of like ends the series. That's what I want. But anyway, kind of. Sorry, Sam.
No, I don't think. Sorry, I've got some Tic Tacs in my mouth. I don't think we're necessarily going to get complete resolution. All our questions will not necessarily get answered.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
which is well.
So because I do feel that with everything that's going on, some things will have to be left off for future seasons and movies down the pipeline. But what I am interested in right now is when Loki was finally able to control his powers. The first thing he did was, I believe, go back to the moment where everything ended.
Yeah,
and he's not only able to now go back in time, he's able to possess himself in that time. Because before he could be in two places at once. But now he's able to be in his body at that time, which he looked like he was at the very, very end of the episode.
Yeah.
So
that's what I mean. His consciousness, he's able to take his consciousness back into himself, rather, like you said, rather than be his whole body. It's more his consciousness. So that gives him an infinite amount of time to kind of put things right.
He can do both now, can't he? He can do both now. Like, he can take over himself in the past, and he can also be alongside himself, not necessarily talking to himself, but be somewhere where his past self can't see his future self, if you know what I mean. Because then he would have already seen it, like that moment where he said hello to himself and all of that shit. He would recognize that. But does that also mean that because he's already seen his future self at times when he said hello to his future self, that in a way his destiny is already predetermined?
I mean, Loki's destiny is always predetermined in that he's always set up to fail. So, at least in the mythology, whether this comes to fruition here, he's able to break the curse of that. That's the interesting part. That's the part where I love to say I don't know, and I love saying I don't know. What I do know is that apparently the final episode is supposed to be what sets off the cataclysm that is like the Kang Wars and all this kind of stuff. And for me, at the moment, because Loki is so interesting, and if that's the end product, then you cannot derail Kang and replace him with Doom like they wanted to. You just got to recast Kang and just go with it, because if it's left an interesting taste in people's mouths in the final episode that's coming, then you got to run with it. And you've got to market the shit out of it and say, yeah, fine, we'll just recast him and move on. Shit happens. They've done it with so many other actors. What's the difference here? So,
I saw somebody saying that they should recast. Jonathan Majors with Terrence Howard.
Yeah, I saw that. That's hilarious.
I think I would be okay with that just for the hilarity and the meta-ness of it.
Yeah, for sure. As long as you have Don Cheadle or Robert Downey Jr. in there as well, just to really spice it up. That'll be really good. So
cool. All right, should we rate it?
All right, let's rate it. Okay, I'll go first if you don't mind. I'll give this episode a solid 8 out of 10. It feels like it's a good penultimate episode that sets things up quite nicely. I'm looking forward to the final. I wouldn't say necessarily it's been the best of all the episodes we've seen so far, but I'm not shitting on it either. Far from it. It's just a good continuation of the story, and I'm happy with it. Cheeto?
I'm probably going to give it a 7. As I said, it seems like Loki was jumping around between one branch of the timeline, picking people up, and I kind of wanted to see more of like different branches of different time. I don't know, a little bit more variation. Maybe they could have thrown a little bit in there that was like making us go, wait a minute, like, oh, so this is an alternate whatever. And a mention of I did think about in 2022 about the snap, and I was like, maybe a mention of the snap would have been nice, just to kind of intertwine all of that a little bit together. And all it has to be is a mention. I'm not even asking for like Owen Wilson flashback where his wife disappears in front of just a mention, like, since your mom disappeared, you guys have become assholes. Like just something like that. Or since your mom was blipped, you guys have been assholes. So but I'll give it a 7. As I said, it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I mean, also I can't really complain either. It wasn't a bad episode by any stretch.
Guys,
I'll give it an 8 as well. I thought there's enough payoff and enough good stuff that I want to see more. I just think that the previous 2 episodes were so good that it takes this one, in my opinion.
All right, and Ginge.
I'm going to give this probably a 9, just because the payoff and some of the scenery was spectacular, with things disintegrating and what happens at the end of it. So we go through that journey and we get that payoff at the end of like him being able to slip his consciousness back in time. And I thought, okay, that's great storytelling, because you give us all this kind of shit, and in the end, it's unnecessary because he could just do it this way. And I loved it, so I'm going to give it a 9. Not as good as the previous 2 episodes, but nowhere near as bad. It's still great, just not as good.
Excellent. Oh no, you're right there, guys.
Yeah.
Is that you? That's you, isn't it?
Well, the yes, it is me.
Yeah. Well, if there was ever a mass shooter in Manchester today, will be the day he'll get away with it, because everybody thinks it's fucking fireworks. All right. Okay. That is it for now. Join myself and Gaz. The hopefully this week for some Quantum Leap reviews. We'll be jumping on that bandwagon from this week onwards. And join us here for NerdTube for everything and anything you can think of. We'll be doing a review of Invincible, probably a season review at some point before Christmas, hopefully. So join us for that, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Thank you, fellas. Bye bye.